After Effects allows you to create vector shape layers right inside the application. You don't even have to use other software to prepare the files. This video takes you through the basics and shows you how to use the controls in the Composition panel and the Timeline panel to create organic shapes and patterns for your creations. And we're going to start in this project here, shapelayers.aep. And here you'll see I have my footage of this man spinning round, and that's been looped. And what we're going to do here is have these little pop-up taglines coming up to tell us details about the energy drink that we're advertising here. So what I want to do is somehow outline these. And I'm going to start by just creating some rectangles to go around the text just to highlight them. So if we go up to the toolbar, you'll notice that you can select the rectangle tool here, and underneath are other shape tools. Now, if you're creating a shape layer, you need to first of all make sure that you have nothing selected down in the timeline. If you're unsure, just click at the bottom here to make sure that no layers are selected. Because if you select a layer, and don't follow me here, just watch, and then draw a rectangle, you'll actually draw a mask. So you don't want to do that. So if you've done that, just undo the new rectangle, and instead deselect the layers, and then select the rectangle tool. And now, if you move over here and just draw a rectangle around this text, you'll notice it creates a new layer called Shape Layer 1. And we've created a rectangle around our text. Now, if you have the default settings, the chances are that you have a red fill inside that square, and it looks something like this. My settings had changed from the default settings, and yours may have too, so you may have different results than what you see here on the screen. But if you have the default settings, you should see a red rectangle with a white stroke. Now, the first set of controls that we're going to have a look at are up here in the application toolbar. And you'll see here, first of all, we have buttons which allow us to choose whether this tool creates a shape or a mask. So if you did have a layer selected, you could override the default selection type by clicking on one of these buttons. Then here you have your fill options. You can click on the colour swatch if you want to choose a different colour, for example blue. Or if you click on this yellow hyperlink here, you can open up the fill options dialog where you can choose between solid colour, gradient, or radial gradient. Now, what I want you to do, there's also blending modes in there incidentally, but I want you to choose none for the fill. So we're not going to have it filled with anything, and then we're going to click OK. And then we're going to go over to our stroke options, and you have similar options there for the stroke options. You can add gradient strokes if you want to, but we're going to leave those and click OK. And we're just going to increase the stroke value to a value of maybe about 5, something like that. So we have a stroke around our text, which is quite nice. Now, I also want to highlight this by maybe having an arrow or a line that attaches it to his body. So what we can do is then draw a line using the pen tool. And we can draw it in this existing shape layer. So I can add graphic elements to the shape. So I can select the pen tool and just click on it here, and it creates a new shape layer. So I'm going to click once, then hold down Shift and click down here to create a vertical line. And then let's keep holding down Shift and click here to create a horizontal line. And you'll see now that the stroke continues all the way to his body. Now, if we have a look down in the timeline, you can see the controls down here. So we've switched off the fill, so notice that the fill is a separate item in the timeline, and it has an eyeball that I can switch on and off. So if you decide you want to see what the fill looks like, you can toggle it on and off. Now, all of these have separate controls, so if we open up the stroke options, notice that I can adjust the stroke width. Now you'll notice that it's only adjusting it for the rectangle. And that's because if we have a look here, you'll see we have the rectangle, then we have the shape on top. So each part of the shape has been created as a separate item. Now there are other ways of doing that. Instead of actually creating a separate item, what we can do is add one shape to another, and I'll show you how to do that in the next step. But in this situation, where we have the rectangle and the shape as two separate items, we would have to go into the stroke value of this one, make an adjustment, go into the stroke value of this one and make an adjustment. Now if you want to make that easier, you can select the shape layer, and just click on the search dialog or search text field and type in stroke. And that will open up both stroke widths for this layer. Okay, so we can easily change them. You could also link them together as well using expressions once you get a little bit more confident with After Effects. Now for the next one, what we're going to do is close up that shape layer, deselect, and then we're going to go up to our comp panel and we're going to create a new one. So this time we're going to choose the rounded rectangle tool just to give us a bit of variety. And it's going to remember the settings we set for the initial shape, so we can just click and drag around the text and it creates the shape we want. But this time, instead of adding another shape group, what we'll do is have this group selected and instead go to the Add menu, and we're going to choose Ellipse this time. And notice it adds an ellipse to this group. You'll notice that it appears underneath Rectangle 1. So Rectangle 1 contains the rectangular path that we drew, but also an elliptical path. Now I can go in here, you'll notice that there are transform properties for the rectangle, and if I adjust that, it moves everything as a group. But I can also go into the ellipse and adjust its position independently of the rectangle. So I can just move that into position, I can scale it down, and we can start to create like little speech bubbles. Now of course, once I've created that, I could just go to Edit, Duplicate, and create a second one. Scale it down, move it across a little bit and down, and we start to create the effect that we want and go on and on and on, creating as many as we want. Now the good thing about that is, notice that the stroke value now makes changes to all of the items contained within the group. Now if you're working this way, you probably want to change this so it says rounded rectangle group, and you do that by selecting the text and then hitting the Enter key on the keyboard to make this editable. And once you've done that, just type in rounded rectangle group, and that contains the rectangle and two ellipses with all of the stroke values underneath. Now we'll take a more detailed look at shape layers in a later movie, but that's an introduction to shape layers. You'll notice that in here we also have other shapes like a polygon and a star. So by all means have a play with these tools and just practice drawing with them. And then one more thing to show you here. If I close up shape layer 2, which again we could rename if we want to, so select the layer, hit return on the keyboard and call it round rectangle frame. Okay, and we'll call this one square rectangle frame. Okay, if we open up the square rectangle frame and have a look at the stroke options, you'll notice at the moment we have butt cap selected for the line cap options, which gives us a straight edge on the line here. If we want to get a nice rounded cap, we can just choose round cap, and that's going to give us a much nicer, softer edge on the edge of that line there. So what I want you to do is have a play with the shape layers and just use the other shape layers to create an outline for this third group here. And you'll see that there's also a fourth group. If you want to turn that on and highlight that, you can do. And that will be a little bit of practice with using shape layers for you.